The world was, let's say, mostly getting on a gold standard during this period. They have $1 trillion plus value. It's very interesting, and it's quite a different picture than the dollar. Hey everybody, welcome. My name is Matthew. We're going to continue on with our series of gold versus the money that is printed by selective nations' central banks here today. In the last video, we looked at the US, how much gold they had that was, quote, backing their national currency, the dollar. Today, we're going to look at Norway. All right, so I'm going to put up the Norwegian kroner here. Data goes back a little bit further than I have for the dollar at the moment. This goes all the way back to around 1876. I'm going to take off the dollar and let's just look at the Norwegian kroner. Again, this is how much gold is sitting in the vaults of the central bank and or the treasury that sits there as an asset while they issue paper notes, coins, and indeed bank accounts to all the banks. All the main accounts that the banks hold with the central bank, that's also included in what is called base money or the monetary base. So as we go here through the late 1800s, and notice I have the USA Coinage Act of 1873. This is when the United States finally fully went on a gold standard. Although I shouldn't say fully, it was a bimetallic standard, but they were on a silver standard before. So the world was, let's say, mostly getting on a gold standard, a classical gold standard during this period. How much gold was backing the Norwegian currency? About 40%. Went a little bit here in 1880 to 50%, and I'm not going to claim that I know nearly as much about Norwegian history as I do about United States history, although I do have some proud heritage from Norway. About 40% here. Okay. Then World War I, interestingly here, you see that the gold reserves fall during World War I in Norway relative to the amount of money they're printing. And then they start to rise after World War I. And after World War I, the backing actually went up to 85%. So the crown was looking pretty strong at this point. Went back down for the rest of the 20s, and then when the US Great Depression happened, more gold flowed into Norway. This was the Norwegian Central Bank, I should say. Of course, this is becoming to be a very scary time in Europe, and so Norway is actually collecting more and more gold reserves. And during World War II, they had to put a lot of that gold into the United States, and it appears, based on this history, that they actually transferred their gold holdings into dollars. So as I showed you here, the last video, the United States accumulated a lot of gold during World War II. Some nations were content to just deposit that gold in the United States and receive dollar balances in exchange. Not every nation did it that way. And again, what I'm showing you here, these lines, this is what is earmarked. It's not which country the gold is in at any particular time, because as I've talked about many times, because of Hitler, because of Stalin, gold did flow in away from Europe into Canada and the United States. It's not necessarily picking that up. What it is picking up is the earmarked holdings, the actual ledger entry of gold, wherever it is in the world, owned by the Norwegian Central Bank and the Norwegian Treasury. So it does appear that Norway, and it was very risky to get a lot of this gold out. They did most of it when Hitler was invading Norway on ships. They took it up to the north of the country, way up north, to get away from the Nazis. For that, see George Tabor's Chasing Gold, fantastic book. And then it sailed west to the United States. So it does appear that during World War II, Norway actually was content to take dollars during the war and deposit their gold into the United States. And that's why the United States number is climbing here and Norway's holdings are falling. Let's take off the dollar again. Interestingly, Norway really doesn't go back. Okay, we do see that with the gold price increasing here after the Nixon shock, after the gold standard ends in its entirety in 1971. You do see with the gold price increasing here to $850 an ounce, Norway's backing of its currency goes up to 18%. But with Norway, we have to ask, and it's interesting here, Norway is not a super rich country. Obviously, they have, 1,000-year plus history. As far as I understand it, even into the 50s, they were not a super wealthy country until they discovered oil there in the North Sea, or really could harness the oil there in the North Sea. And so the gold holdings that backed their currency actually continued to fall. And yes, even though it had this pump here in the early 1980s, look at it fall again and again as a percentage of the currency issued, all the way to 5%, 4%, 3% by 2002. What happened in 2002? They sell it all. Interestingly, around the same time as Brown's Bottom, selling at a low price, but they sell it all. And to this day, Norway holds no gold. Okay, it's not the only country, but it's a very interesting country that doesn't hold any gold. So what do they hold? Well, they hold government bonds for the Norwegian government. They hold Norwegian government bonds as an asset. The Norwegian central bank, the Norges Bank, they print money and buy government bonds. But what they also do, and which they've done since the 60s, is they hold companies that invest and drill for and supply oil to the world. Taking a moment to remind you that this show is brought to you by Trezor, home of the original Bitcoin hardware wallet. For over 10 years now, Trezor means business in Bitcoin security and functionality. When using their wallet software Trezor Suite to connect to the Bitcoin network, you're automatically connected via Tor, protecting your identity and giving you full control of your coins in a fully open source manner, both on the software level and on the hardware level. So head on over to Trezor.io to grab your brand new Trezor Safe 5 with a secure element, as well as a ton of available accessories to back up your keys and keep your coins safe. That's a very interesting thing, and that's not connected to the money at all. So if you looked at the Norway balance sheet today, you would see $1 trillion equivalent plus holdings in their pension fund, their sovereign wealth fund, $1 trillion plus equivalent, multiply that by 10 or so, right, to get the Norwegian kroner value. So that's an asset that the central bank holds. And as a liability, it's just a liability to the people. It's the amount outstanding owed to the Norwegian people when the Norwegian government is going to have to pay out some social security claim or amount per their sovereign pension fund. So they have an asset, a liability, both, which is $1 trillion plus. Very interesting, and I would say impressive for the government to have that foresight over the last 50 years to do that. But the actual amount of money, outstanding base money, Norwegian kroners, outstanding in Norway, and the amount of government bonds on the asset side that the central bank holds is very, very low relative to all central banks in the world. If you look at my base money reports every quarter, the Norwegian kroner, the Norwegian central bank, ranks very, very low in base money value and in government bonds that they hold as a central bank. But of course, outside of that, as sort of a segregated line item on the Norges central bank balance sheet, they have $1 trillion plus value for the pension fund asset and $1 trillion plus valuation liability for the pension fund. And of course, they've been trying to go green in the last few years, but nonetheless, that's what they have. It's very interesting, and it's quite a different picture than the dollar, which we talked about in the last video, though of course the dollar is declining in balance sheet value as well, the gold backing. So that's Norway. Hope that was interesting for you. In the next video, we'll talk about the United Kingdom. Thanks for watching.